Hyvää huomenta kaikille Marketing Finlandilta. Minä olen Reetta Karjalainen ja pääsen tässä avaamaan meidän Net Zeroa koskevan webinaarin. Ja tässä webinaarissa meille puhuu Mary O'Sullivan ja Valentina Mendes-Rio ja myöskin sitten Riikka Lemminki pääsee kertomaan tässä Suomen puolen uutisia tästä Net Zerosta tässä webinaarin aluksi. Ja Riikka puhuu suomeksi ja sitten Mary ja Valentina puhuvat englanniksi ja webinaarin loppupuolella voitte kysyä kysymyksiä. Tästä webinaarista tehdään tallenne ja se tulee teille sitten sähköpostiin. Mutta minäpä annan nyt puheenvuoron sinulle, Riikka. Ole hyvä.
Kiitoksia Reetta ja hyvää huomenta kaikille. Mä oon siis Riikka-Maria Lemminki ja toimin Marketing Finlandilla toimitusjohtajan roolissa. Ja tässä on kiva, että puhutaan tänään vastuullisuudesta ja markkinoinnista ja viestinnästä samassa lauseessa. Ja kiva, että meillä on näin hyvä myöskin porukka tässä linjoilla tänään kuulemassa, että mistä on kyse Net Zerosta. Lähdetään liikenteeseen siitä, että missä maailmassa me eletään tällä hetkellä ja minkälaisia asioita meidän ympärillä tapahtuu. Maailma muuttuu koko aika, me tiedetään kaikki se, ja vastuullisuusvaatimukset myöskin yrityksille kasvaa. Ja se, että miksi Net Zero on syntynyt aikana on se, että mainostoimistot, viestintätoimistot on ihan samalla tavalla yrityksiä, joilla on vastuullisuusvaateita kuin mikä tahansa muukin yritykset maailmassa. Ja tässä niin kuin Net Zerossa keskitytään siihen, että miten alan toimijat, palvelutarjoajat pystyy toimia vastuullisemmin ja myöskin sitä, että minkälaisia asioita ja vaatimuksia se sitten asettaa myöskin mainonnan ja viestinnän palvelujen ostamiselle. Me aikanaan Marketing Finlandilla joku varmaan 3-4 vuotta sitten tehtiin tällainen mindmappi vastuullisuudesta ja ollaan tätä myöskin sitten päivitetty koko aika ja koko aika tuntuu, että tulee uusia asioita. Ja se, miten me voidaan vaikuttaa markkinoinnin ja viestinnän tekijöinä niin kuin omalla toiminnallaan näihin meidän tekoihin, että me ollaan vastuullisempia, miten voidaan tehdä maailmasta parempaa, niin niitä keinoja itse asiassa todella paljon. Ja usein korostuu keskusteluissa ympäristövastuu ja hiilijalanjälki, jota me jätetään. Meidän alalla on itse asiassa yllättävän iso merkitys niillä valinnoilla, mitä me tehdään. Kun me puhutaan digimainonnasta, me aletaan puhua serveritilasta, miten serveritilaa voidaan optimoida. Me puhutaan usein siitä, että minkälainen mainonta ylipäätään kannattaa tehdä, koska sellainen mainos, joka ei tuo tulosta, niin se vaan vie serveritilaa. Vastaavasti meillä on paljon printtimateriaaleja, meillä on valtava määrä kaikkea muuta aineistoa, giveawayta, mitä me tilataan, ja me ollaan messuilla, jotka ei ole suinkaan ongelmattomia myöskään sen hiilijalanjäljen näkökulmasta, kuten ei myöskään sitten ne, mitä me tilataan, esimerkiksi mainoksia tai muuta painomateriaaleja, tai sitten kun me palautellaan meidän virhetuotteita, niin siellä syntyy aika paljon sitä hiilijalanjälkeä. Ja tämä on yksi sellainen tämä hiilijalanjälki, mihin me voidaan vaikuttaa jo siellä suunnitteluvaiheessa ja todella tärkeä osa vastuullisuutta. Mutta sen lisäksi meillä on myöskin dataan liittyvää, sosiaaliseen vastuullisuuteen liittyvää, kulttuurillisiin asioihin liittyviä. On paljon niitä asioita, mitä voidaan markkinoinnin hankinnoilla vaikuttaa suoraan, esteettömyyttä. Ja sitten meillä on myöskin sisällöntuotantoon liittyviä eettisiä asioita, joita me voidaan vaikuttaa. Ja tämä Net Zero, mistä me tänään puhutaan, on yksi niistä asioista, joilla pyritään saamaan ihan konkreettisia vaikutuksia tässä markkinoinnin kentässä. Ja sen takia me ollaan myöskin sitten Marketing Finlandina erittäin kiinnostuneet oltu liittymään tähän Net Zero-hankkeeseen. Ja me tarkastellaan Marketing Finlandilla tätä vastuullisuutta oikeastaan 2 näkökulmasta, ja niin kuin sanoin tuossa, yksi on se vastuullinen markkinoinnin ja viestinnän toiminta, johon me voidaan itse vaikuttaa. Meidän alla starttaa tällainen vastuullisen markkinoinnin ja viestinnän työryhmä, ja tämä on itse asiassa syntynyt sellaisesta meidän yhdestä vastuullisuusteosta, kun me lähdettiin muutama vuosi sitten sertifioimaan Suomeen tällaisia vastuullisen markkinoinnin ja viestinnän osaajia, ja syntyi tällainen vastuullisen markkinoinnin ja viestinnän sertifikaattiohjelma. Se on käynyt jo useita kymmeniä ihmisiä läpi, ja se on myöskin kasvattanut meidän osaamista ja ymmärrystä siitä, että minkälaisia työkaluja siellä on. Ja nämä sitten nämä, jotka on käynyt tämän sertifikaattio-ohjelman, ne ovat aloittaneet tällaisen alumnitoiminnan ja tavanneet sitten toisiaan myöskin tämän sertifikaattio-ohjelman ulkopuolella, ja nyt me ollaan sitten muodostamassa siitä tällainen vastuullisen markkinoinnin ja viestinnän työryhmä, jota sitten toi Saara Kemiläinen lähtee meillä luotsaamaan eteenpäin. Ja Saara on tuolla IAPn puolella ollut myöskin aikaisemmin sitten tekemisissä siellä digitaalisen mainonnan puolella ja siellä myöskin vastuullisuuskulmalla. Ja yksi näistä asioista on tosissaan tämä hankkeesta on tämä Net Zero Finland, jolla nimellä tämä kulkee, mistä me tänään puhutaan, joka tulee sinne alle. Tähän myöskin liittyy tällainen, mitä me haetaan sitten Traficomilta, DSAan liittyvää direktiiviin liittyen luotettavan ilmoittajan rooli, eli pysytään sitten myöskin paremmin dokumentoimaan ja kun me raportoidaan alustoille niistä ongelmista, mitä myös sitten tuolla näillä niin sanotulla Volletser-alustoilla on, niin tämä myös on yksi niitä aiheita, joka on tarkoitus tuohon ryhmään liittää. Ja sitten meillä on myöskin tämä alumnitoiminta, eli pyritään siihen, että ne ihmiset, jotka jakaa samantyyppisen mindsetin ja puhuu samaa kieltä vastuullisesta markkinoista ja viestinnästä, että niillä on edelleenkin paikka, jossa he kohtaavat. Ja sitten myöskin ihan konkreettisia ohjeistuksia on tarkoitus tehdä. Ja näitä me ollaan tosissaan jo tuotettu tässä Net Zero hengessä, että vaikka nyt me puhutaan, että me lanseerataan Suomeen myöskin tämä Net Zero kokonaisuus, niin tässä ympärillä on jo tehty taustalla paljon asioita. Ja yksi on tällainen ohjeistus vastuullisuutta painotöihin ja markkinoinnin logistiikkaa, jossa annetaan ihan konkreettisia vinkkejä suunnitteluun, tilauksiin, aikatauluttamiseen, materiaalivalintoihin, painotekniikkaan, mutta myöskin sitten markkinoinnin logistiikan puolelle, miten esimerkiksi kuljetuksia voidaan hallita välivarastoinnilla, pienentää hiilijalanjälkeä. Ja tämäkin on syntynyt yhden näistä meidän sertifikaattio-ohjelman käyneen henkilön aloitteesta. Eli siellä on Esa Graanolta on ollut mukana sitten tekemässä tätä ohjeistusta, ja sitten meillä on logistiikkakumppaneilla ollut Freja Transport and Logistics, josta myöskin sitten oli ihminen mukana tässä sertifikaattio-ohjelmassa. Ja tässä se toinen näkökulma sitten, kun me tarkastellaan Marketing Finlandina vastuullista markkinointia ja viestintää, on myöskin se, että meillä on valtava rooli myöskin vastuullisuuden edistäjinä. Ja me toivotaan, että tämä myöskin, kun me Suomessa päästään nyt tässä Net Zero-hankkeen osalta myöskin eteenpäin, me päästään myöskin kiinnittämään huomiota siitä, että minkälaisia työkaluja yrityksillä on käytössään ja markkinoinnin ammattilaisilla, jolla voidaan vaikuttaa tähän maailmaan paremmin. Ja tämä Net Zero on todella, siis on keskittynyt sinne, lähtee sieltä, että saadaan toimistot, saavat oman pesän niin sanotusti kuntoon, ja sitten mietitään ihan konkreettisia toimia, ja tämä on meille todella tärkeää, että tässä ei ole vain toimistot mukana, vaan tässä on myöskin ostajat mukana. Ja toinen sellainen asia, minkä kanssa me tehdään paljon töitä, tai organisaatio on sitten UN Woman, ja heillä on tällainen Unstereotype Alliance, ja siellä annetaan tosiaan konkreettisia työkaluja siihen, että miten me kerrotaan ihmisistä, miten me puhutaan ihmisistä, miten me luodaan positiivista kehomielikuvaa, miten me taistellaan niin kuin moniarvoisuuden, niin kuin moninaisuuden puolesta ja ihan todella konkreettisia asioita, eli työkaluja, joilla me voidaan vaikuttaa ihmisten asenteisiin. Ja kolmantena tällaisena kokonaisuutena meillä Marketing Finlandissa on ollut tällainen GARM, eli puhutaan Global Alliance for Responsible Media. Osa teistä on varmaan ehkä kuullutkin tästä hankkeesta, ja tämä hanke tosissaan oli voimassa, oli 3 vuotta, ja tässä oli mukana kaikki isoimmat alustatoimijat ja sitten isommat brändit maailmalta, ja meillä oli sitten Nordic-kokonaisuus Suomessa, ja täällä me pystyin ihan konkreettisesti raportoimaan sitten alustoille, kun me huomattiin, että siellä oli jotakin esimerkiksi bränditurvallisuuteen liittyvää tai ylipäätään turvallisuuteen liittyvää alustoilla. Mutta se, miksi me ei enää puhuta tästä GARMista, on se, että Elon Musk haastoi tämän kokonaisuuden viime kesäkuussa oikeuteen, ja edelleen se oikeuskäsittely USAssa on meneillään, ja sen takia tämä GARM on todellakin tällä hetkellä on nyt sitten alhaalla, ja me ei myöskään Marketing Finlandina voida enää tätä edes meidän verkkosivustolla kertoa. Mutta nostan tämän sen takia esiin, koska täällä on paljon sellaisia tärkeitä asioita, joita ei ole todellakaan unohdettu. Ei olla unohdettu myöskään sitä, että mainostajilla on aika iso voima siinä, että miten alustat käyttäytyy, koska voi sanoa, että se mainosraha, mitä mainostajat ja mediatoimistot, mainostoimistot kohdentaa alustoille, on myöskin niin sanottu kannatusääni, ja se myöskin vaikuttaa, voidaan sillä vaikuttaa siihen, että tai on oikeus vaatia, että ne alustat, missä mainostetaan, niiden pitää olla sitten luotettavia alustoja. Ja vielä tuosta Stereotype Allianceista sen verran, että olette saattanut ehkä törmätäkin tuossa osa niihin, että mitä me Marketing Finlandilla ollaan tehty ihan käytännössä. Eli me tuossa ollaan esimerkiksi, kun on ollut naistenpäivänä, on ollut kampanja, missä on nostettu naisjohtajia esiin. Me ollaan oltu mukana siinä rakentamassa. Samoin sitten kansainvälisesti ollaan pelipuolella nostettu naisten asemaa esiin ja saatu sitten saman pöydän ääreen keskustelemaan sekä mainostajia että pelaajayhteisöjä että sitten alustatoimijoita, että on tosi iso ekosysteemi ja ollaan sitten pystytty kasaamaan ihmisiä saman pöydän ääreen ja lisäämään myöskin tietoisuutta aiheen ympärillä. Mutta tässä niin kuin mun mielestä hienoa on tässä Unstereotype Allianceissa on se, että täällä on ihan konkreettisia myöskin ohjeita siihen, että miten me voidaan vaikuttaa mielikuviin, miten me voidaan vaikuttaa asenteisiin, ja nämä on sen takia mekin näitä niin halutaan jakaa ja levittää osana kokonaisuutta. Ja sitten tänään, kun me keskustellaan Net Zerosta, niin meillä on tosissaan tavoite siinä Marketing Finlandilla, että me saataisiin Net Zero Suomeen jalkautettua. Saadaan tästä myöskin tukijalka meidän toimistoille Suomessa, ja osa toimistoista onkin jo törmännyt siihen, että kun on tekemissä kansainvälisien isompien mainostajien kanssa, niin siellä on ollut vaatimuksena se, että toimisto on mukana Net Zero-hankkeessa, eli me tullaan Suomessakin tekemään sellainen lomake, jolla voi sitten allekirjoittamalla pääsee mukaan tähän Net Zero-hankkeeseen ja osaksi kokonaisuutta, jossa sitten oman toimiston sitä hiilijalanjälkeä ja vastuullisuutta voidaan sitten kehittää. Et summa summarum voidaan sanoa, että Suomessa me ollaan jo tosi pitkällä, mitä tulee vastuullisuuteen, mutta paljon on vielä tekemistä ja me toivotaan ehkä, että Suomessa, kun me lähdetään tätä lanseeraamaan, niin me mennään myös vähän enemmän myöskin niille muille vastuullisuuden osa-alueille ja saadaan ihan konkreettisia työkaluja sitten meillä toimistojen käyttöön. Et me ollaan paljon jo tehty, mutta pyritään sitten kasaamaan nämä vielä selkeämmäksi kokonaisuudeksi. Mutta mä voisin luovuttaa seuraavaksi tuosta keskustelun Märille ja Valentinalle, jotka kertovat meille, että mistä tässä Net Zero-hankkeessa on kyse ja miten tämä on levinnyt myöskin sitten maailmalle. Ja jos teille tulee kysymyksiä Suomen Net Zerohun, niin laittakaa mulle vaan viestiä riikka@marketingfinland.fi. Ja tosissaan, jos olette kiinnostuneita tästä vastuullisen markkinoinnin ja viestinnän ohjelmasta tai työryhmästä, joka meillä nyt alkaa, niin suosittelen ehdottomasti, että laittakaa viestiä ja kannattaa hypätä jo alkuvaiheessa mukaan. Eli Saara Kemiläinen Nitrolta ottaa siitä ryhmästä sitten vetovastuun. Mutta Mary ja Valentina, please, the stage is yours.
Thank you.
Kiitos, Riikka.
Morning, everybody. You can hear me okay?
Yes, we can hear you too. And now we can see your slides.
Great. Thank you so much, and Riikka Maria, thank you so much for that invitation and for that introduction for Net Zero. Marketing Finland have obviously been very supportive of the initiative since the very start, so we're very grateful of the ongoing support and the early adoption that Marketing Finland have taken when it comes to Net Zero. So just to introduce myself, I'm Mary O'Sullivan. I manage the Net Zero program in Europe, and recently some of the other international markets as well, are some of the newer markets that we're looking to engage with over the next 12 months. I'm just going to maybe set the scene a little bit in terms of Net Zero, what it is, who we are, and I guess why we're here and why we're trying to do this work. I'm aware that there will be some of you in the audience that have done a lot of work already, which is always great news. And I know obviously we're dealing with a very progressive market when it comes to sustainability and lowering emissions. But I just wanted to, I suppose, bring you through the program, let you know what it's about. There may be areas that you have already engaged with through other partners, but there may be some other parts of Net Zero that perhaps you're not aware of, or you haven't progressed or looked into yet. So hopefully I can give you a little bit of background on the framework and how that works. So just, I suppose, again, to let you know what Net Zero is all about. I'm sure Maria has given you some introduction already, but basically it is the coming together of the entire industry in an effort to lower our emissions right across the board. So it's commercial, creative, media agencies, PR agencies, event companies, creative directors, and anybody really working within the media and advertising industry are the people that we're inviting to be part of Net Zero. It was launched, and I can go through the pathway in a few minutes in terms of the countries and the markets we're involved with. But essentially, the European hub was set up last year through the EACA based in Brussels, and myself and Valentina have been managing the progress of that for the last 12 months. So basically, our ambition is the same right across the world, and now increasingly into Europe, is just to help us to lower our carbon emissions through anything that we're involved with in the advertising ecosystem, I guess. We're just trying to create some commitments from partners across the globe to make sure that people are taking those targets seriously, setting the targets, setting them realistically, and our job really is to try and bring everybody together, try and form some sort of partnerships and collaborations, and to help people in their efforts in lowering emissions, no matter what part of the industry they're involved in. So just to give you a little bit of an overview in terms of the emissions that are already kind of in different sectors across the market, and I guess people can be quite surprised that media represents 2% of our global emissions. I mean, 2% doesn't sound very big, but I guess, I mean, it's kind of on a par with a lot of our aviation and our business flights that we take across the globe. We may only represent 2% of the emissions globally, but more importantly, we have an opportunity to influence the other 98%. So basically, it's a small in terms of our emissions, and our direct emissions when it comes to the media industry is small, but basically we have an opportunity to influence, like I said, the consumer demand right across every other industry. For those of you who kind of maybe thinking about where these emissions are coming from and how each part of the process is involved, I mean, we're talking about the emissions that take place, everything from when agencies are going out to pitch. So how do they create a brief? How do they talk to agencies about the brief? The creative agencies that get involved, the production. How do we influence behavior in terms of the creative production? How do we help them to lower their emissions in terms of being more sustainable in the ads that they produce? The media agencies, how are they placing ads? How are they broadcasting ads? What channels are they using? And we look there at the channel mix, everything from social all the way through to print and out of home and digital as well. Where are the emissions in each one of these sections? Where do they sit? Are we measuring them? How do we measure them? And ultimately, how can we decrease the emissions within each part of this flow? And obviously then at the end, we talk about the influence that we have in terms of our consumer messaging. So when we're speaking to our consumers, how do we do that in a transparent and authentic way? So that's just giving you an idea of the channel mix and where the emissions kind of fall into each part of the journey when it comes to placing media. In terms of Net Zero, we started, I guess, some of you may be aware, we started in London with the Advertising Association, and again, it was something that came out of some conversations that happened around the time of COVID, to say, look, we need to start looking at the emissions that we're creating in the industry. Some agencies and some markets were already quite far, had progressed quite well in terms of looking at this, but a lot of markets hadn't. So they opened up a global initiative also as part of the UK Net Zero. As you may or may not guess from my accent, I'm from Ireland. We were quite an early adopter in Ireland because we're typically quite linked to a lot of the UK activity. And again, it's a small market, but we consider ourselves fairly progressive. So we joined quite quickly after the global team was established. very soon after that, then in 2022 and 2023, we had New Zealand, the US, obviously a very large market, Australia, and we're now also working with the UAE over the past 12 months. We launched the European hub in May or April of last year, and myself and Valentina have been working through each one of the markets to try and establish a local ad net zero in each one of these markets. So it's just right now we're just trying to increase that growth, I guess, and progress the growth across Europe, and also to work with the Finnish chapter and all of the other chapters that we have on board. To give you an idea of some of the supporters that we have globally, you can see it's quite an eclectic mix of media owners and platforms and agencies right across the globe. They're global supporters, so they support Ad Net Zero at a global level and financially support us so that we can exist. We're a non-profit organisation, so it's only with the help of these local supporters, or global supporters, that we can exist. They are global supporters, and very often they are also local supporters within each one of the markets that we work with. So just, I guess, to give you an idea of the kind of stuff that we try to do in Ad Net Zero with the local chapters that we have, we're looking at measurement, first of all. So how is your data collected? How do you know what kind of emissions you're already expending in your industry, within your agencies? How do we look at that across the board? How do we put in place some guidelines for people working towards lowering their emissions? We work with the SBTi and Science Based Targets Initiative to try and help anybody within this industry to align their targets in terms of their emissions, and trying to find ways that we can lower them by 2050 in line with the Paris Agreement. Everything we try to do with Ad Net Zero is about pre-competitive collaboration. So basically, we're aware that there is that there is a lot of competitiveness within the marketplace. We try to be sensitive about that. We ask people to share. We ask people to come to the table and being open to share the work that they're doing. But we're obviously aware as well that not everybody is keen to share everything. But we are trying to foster an environment where people can show and share the work that they've already done, because what we're finding is that the more people can see the work that's being done in real life and real time, the more encouraged they are to do the same, and also to share the experiences across the markets and across the globe, to say, look, we don't have this all figured out yet, but maybe here's ways that we can try and help each other. One of the main things that we do at Ad Net Zero, the reason we really exist, is to try and provide some form of guidance. We do not have all the answers, but we work with various partners across the board and across the industry so that we can provide the best guidance that we can in terms of each one of the areas that we deal with. We're very strong and also on delivering webinars, training sessions, education sessions, which we'll talk about a little bit later on. But yeah, basically, we're just here to try and guide and support anybody that we deal with. I guess, in essence, what Ad Net Zero tries to do is to become the conduit or the platform where people can come and get advice and get guidance from us. And we like to think of ourselves as the one place that we can talk about all the different areas within the media industry, and we have the contacts and the partnerships within the industry, and we've been dealing with that for the past number of years. We just want to make sure that our industry is seen as credible and positive, and everything that we talk to our consumers about is that we do it in an authentic way. We run various sessions on greenwashing and more recently green hushing, which is where when people don't want to talk about the work that they're doing because they're afraid that they're going to get called out. So we're trying to champion sustainably led campaigns, be it from a creative point of view, be it from a placement point of view, and then we like to bring that information and celebrate that right across the global community at Ad Net Zero. So basically, what does it look like? The Ad Net Zero is based on a 5-pillar framework. We've split it up into 5 areas because we're trying to cover off each one of the different areas in the industry. We call these actions. So our action 1 deals with everything that's internal in your agency or in your company. So how do you lower your own emissions? What's happening within your own house? What does your energy use look like? What does your wastage look like? What about business travel? So it's about trying to get a handle on that internally. Action 2 is about the creative industry and the production industry. How do we lower emissions from our productions? How do we create more green, more sustainable productions? Action 3 is quite a large, robust area, and it's about our emissions within the media itself and our media activity. And I'll talk a little bit about that now in a moment in terms of what we're doing to help support that. Our Action 4 is about events and awards. So when we're running events across the industry, how do we do that in a sustainable way? How do we lead by example in terms of, you know, how we produce sustainable events, you know, the products that we're using, the suppliers that we're using, and also when it comes to awards, how are we celebrating people who are doing a really good job in this area? Our final action is Action 5, and look, this is one that is just is always going to be ongoing, because that's about consumer behavior and consumer engagement. So how do we talk to consumers? How do we advertise authentically and credibly? How do we avoid greenwashing? What is greenwashing? What is the legislation? So we just talk about all of that and try to help and guide and support all of our members, I guess, in terms of how they do that in a transparent way. When it comes to the 5 actions, we've partnered with a number of people to support us. Like I said at the start, we don't have all the answers, and we're a relatively small, tight team in Net Zero. So we have a lot of partners that we work with, including Ad Green for production. We work very closely with IAB. And I know Rika Maria mentioned GARM. So when GARM was disbanded in the middle of last year, we basically took over that work. We were already working with GARM on creating this sustainable framework for media. So we've basically taken that over now entirely. So we've an Net Zero team that's dedicated to working on this framework when it comes to lowering our emissions through our media activities. We also obviously work quite closely with Cannes Lion and with the Net Zero Awards that'll be happening later on this year. All of this information, these resources, by the way, are available. You just maybe need to reach out to Rika Maria or myself and Valentina. We can put you in touch and join you up with all of these resources, depending on what area you're involved with. Just to kind of give you a little bit of an idea of the European hub, how it works, because we often get asked, where does Europe fit in globally? That just gives you a little bit of a snapshot on our global team, who our global supporters are, and out of the global team then comes our individual chapters. The European hub, obviously quite a large one, and as you can see here, we have a number of local markets already signed up to the European hub. When I say signed up, what I basically mean is that they have established a local Net Zero chapter, like Marketing Finland have done. So right now we are in Poland, Finland, here in Belgium, Italy, Norway, the Netherlands, Slovakia, Ireland, of course, and most recently Turkey. So Turkey have joined us in the last couple of weeks, and they're already making some great progress over the last little while. And we obviously have our other local chapters, Australia, UAE, and New Zealand. We are looking at other potential markets globally, some of the larger ones, but that's just going to take a little bit of time before we get involved in that. What we do at the European Hub is basically, between myself and Valentina, we support all of the local chapters. So we in turn support Marketing Finland, and we support all of the local chapters in each one of those marketplaces. What we try to do, and what's working quite well, apart from just dealing individually with the markets, is that we're having a lot of success in putting different partners together across different markets. So for example, if somebody in Italy is producing a carbon calculator for the events industry, and we know that somebody in the Netherlands is perhaps looking to do something similar, we'll put those two partners in touch so that they can lower, increase efficiencies, lower the cost base in terms of producing a calculator. So that's kind of what we're trying to do as well, is trying to create that network within Europe, so people can talk to each other, and again try to avoid duplication of effort, which in turn obviously will drive some efficiency across the market. We have a number of different ways that we want to get the local chapters involved, and hopefully this will be a conversation for Marketing Finland as well in terms of driving this. For each one of our local chapters, we have a seat at the table at the global steering group, so that you can influence what happens and bring your own experiences from your local market to the global stage and have an influence in how we drive this forward. We've also launched the the Net Zero Foundational Pathway, which we haven't launched in Europe yet, but it's certainly live in the US and the UK and Ireland, and that's basically a way of tracking our progress. So we'll be inviting supporters from Finland to get involved with that. It's like a survey of sorts that says, how are you doing about your targets? Have you put targets in place? What are the challenges, more importantly, that you're facing when it comes to driving down your own emissions? And that way that we can get a picture locally of what's happening within each market, and then we get a picture from a European level of where we are in terms of lowering our emissions and what we can do to help quicken that progress, I guess. Obviously, anybody who's a member of Net Zero, and we would encourage you to become a supporter, you'll be invited to anything that we do and we produce in terms of seminars, guidance, educational training sessions, anything that we do. All of our supporters locally and globally are invited to attend those. Again, any industry events that Net Zero are putting on, I mean, we get involved in FE's Europe, for example, or anything else that we're involved with. We want to make sure that our supporters are part of that. Anybody who becomes a supporter gets access to a proud supporter kit, so that this is something you can use in your PR and your website or whatever it is you want to do to show that you have that commitment towards driving your own emissions down. Again, education, big part of what we do. Throughout that action plan, that 5-point action plan, we run training sessions and invite experts, I guess, from each one of those areas to talk to the industry about what's best practice, what should they avoid, what are the challenges that typically people face and how they can overcome those. And basically it's a big part of what we try to do is just communication and education to make sure anybody who's working in the industry knows everything they need to know about managing their emissions and driving sustainability through their advertising efforts. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to ask my lovely colleague Valentina to take you through some of the sessions, just to give you a little bit of an idea of the kind of stuff that we're involved in. And as supporters of Net Zero, these are the kind of sessions that you will have access to once you become part of Net Zero.
Thank you, Mary. Yeah, hi everyone. I'm Valentina, and I'm working with Mary as part of the Europe Hub and coordinating the activities that we are trying to get started with, and all the sessions that we're trying to bring to the table. So this year we started with the AI sustainability session, which was something that Net Zero supporters across the globe were asking a lot. So it was divided in 3 parts. The first part was more like a broad aspect of how is the impact for the advertising industry, then going through how does this influences creativity and production, and how to use AI like for good, but also to understand how to minimize the impact to the environment. And then the last part, of course, about policy and regulation, which is something that we are always trying to take into account as at Net Zero. We do get asked a lot if we are consultants, but we are not really consultants. But what we try to do is to bring experts into the table that will try to bring the best information about all these topics. So as we explained to Rika Maria, that these sessions normally are for Net Zero supporters, but we decided to open the AI sustainability sessions for everyone or all the members of Marketing Finland. So the first 2 sessions happened already, but you can still join the next one about policy and regulation, which is going to happen the 4th of March. So if you want to join that one, please, you can email Mary and myself directly, or you can, Rita can let me know if you want to join that one. And yeah, just to show you a bit like who were the speakers on these sessions, we had people from Google, from the Advertising Association, from HABA, CISBA, and it is made in a way where it's like a panel that they can present something, but then there's also a lot of discussion. And we always say that part of the biggest value of these sessions is it happens on the chat, because there's so much discussion going on. There's questions and like the panelists answer in real time. So this is a big opportunity to get some answers on whatever you think is the most important. And so we are going to try from now on to have one session per month on different topics. We are trying to get started with what we think is most important from what we are getting from Net Zero supporters, but for us it's really important to understand what our local markets needing. So we're going to start with this one about agents of change, which is a toolkit created by the IPA based on interviews to over 30 experts in the industry. And they created like kind of an easy way on how to get started. Well, first of all, how to understand where you're sitting. So I know that in Finland you already have some progress done. So I think this toolkit is also useful to kind of not get back to the beginning, like back to basics, because we do have in Net Zero other markets that are less advanced, and then they want to get some more basic information starting from their own agency and their own operations on how to get this journey started. So this first session of Agents of Change, we think it's going to be super valuable to go through all the toolkit, and then of course provide you as well with that toolkit at the end of the session. Then we're going to have 3 sessions on the Corporate Sustainability Reporting Directive, the CSRD, which we know that it's something that is starting to become or create some pressure among the industry, because some groups are going to have to start reporting already in this year in 2025 or in 2026 or 7, so they have to start preparing for it. And there's just a lot of discussion going on how is this going to impact agencies in the way of like which data points they're going to have to take into account, how to assess a double materiality, how to understand how a report has to look like. So we are making these 3 sessions about the Europe, then UK and US. You can join all of them, but of course, most likely is going to be most interesting the session about Europe. And this session is also going to be fixed by someone that is an expert on CSRD that is not in the advertising industry. So it's going to give like a broad view of how this directive works, and it's going to give as well like some tools, like free tools and AI tools that you can use for CSRD. And then we have another panelist that is going to be more focused on the advertising industry and how agencies can best prepare to for this topic. So we try to make it as complete as possible. And then, okay, in May, we're going to have a session about sustainability as a competitive advantage. So this belief that sustainability is going to harm the businesses or is going to have a big financial impact, we're trying to work against that and show that actually sustainability can show that you are you're doing good as a business, and you can use that in your own advantage. So this also relates to what Mary was saying about the foundational pathway, because we believe that this survey is not only good for Net Zero and for us to know how our supporters are doing and how to measure how the emissions are working across all markets, but also for agencies themselves to be able to use that as your own advantage to show the progress that you're doing. And well, just lastly, in the sessions topic, we also have a YouTube channel, and we have pre-recorded sessions from last year, and some of them are still like even if it's from 2 years ago, some of them are really valuable because it's about, for example, sustainability fundamentals, how to get started, and it goes of course also to more niche topics. So for example, the AI and sustainability. If you missed the first 2 sessions, you could also access those sessions recorded. About the global media sustainability framework, there's a lot of content on that, and especially on that as well, if there is something specifically that you would like to know, we can always contact with the global media sustainability team that they can explain how is this working. So this really depends from market to market, but what we want you to know is that we want to bring to the table what you think is going to be useful for you. So these first sessions is something that we're trying to do to attract everyone, to bring everyone to the table, as Mary was explaining, basically. But we also want to hear what you want and then bring it to life, basically. And well, back to Mary on what is next for the Europe Hub.
Yeah, I guess, look, from our point of view, what we want to do today and over the next couple of weeks is just, we wanted to show you what Net Zero is all about, to maybe introduce you to the different areas that we cover. And just to show you kind of what's on the table for you to be able to access. We just want to bring as many agencies, companies, professionals, whoever you are, whatever part of the industry you're involved in, we want to bring everybody together so that we can start to have the conversations and start to support each other. As Valentina said, we're really driven, specifically when it comes to the local markets, we're very driven by what we're getting back from the local markets. So every market's at a different stage. Obviously, you guys are probably much further advanced than some of the other markets we deal with, but you let us know. You say, you know what, that stuff is too basic for our general our industry here locally. Let us know what you want, and then we can try and create and work together to try and create some more robust materials or some more advanced training or whatever that is. But this really works as kind of a two-way street, I guess. So we're continuing to work with trade associations right across Europe and indeed globally. Valentina does some work with EdCom, which is in the education industry, in terms of working with some of the universities to perhaps support some of the students that are maybe going through some marketing courses and just to introduce them to sustainability. So we try to partner and support some of the universities as well across Europe. So we're open. We do have a framework that we promote and that we want to talk to people about, but ultimately we are driven by what the local markets want. So that's really what we wanted to let you know today. And that's really it from us. I know we have some time left for any questions. Rita, if you wanted to
Yes.
if anybody has any questions, but ultimately just to let you know, you can find myself and Valentina at any time. You reach out to us directly through Rika Maria or directly, and we're happy to help.
Thank you, Mary and Valentina. This is very inspiring. Let's see, we have some questions here. Yes, are the platforms truly committed to the Net Zero initiative when they are now pulling out of all sustainability projects?
Look, I think that's quite a fluid situation at the moment in terms of the platforms. Certainly what we have seen since we launched Net Zero back in 2020 or 2022 is that the platforms have been quite engaged, and I guess from our point of view, we are working with them all to try and advance their efforts and to support them in that way. It's a difficult one because we know that they're not all perfect. We know that. And we know that there are some ripples in the environment, certainly in the US at the moment. But what we know so far is that any conversations that we have had with the platforms is that they remain completely committed. We recently just had them rejoin in January, obviously a very sensitive time, and they all remain, like I said, completely committed. Spotify, again, have re-engaged with us in terms of being a member. Amazon Ads, we have MasterCard, Louis Vuitton, we've a couple of other brands that have joined us at the start of this year, and the conversations we've had so far is that they've said nothing has changed in terms of their commitment here.
All right, and how important do you see brands' commitment and involvement in the initiative?
For us, brands are quite key. I guess they were probably in the start, maybe towards the end of the journey in terms of bringing the industry together. The obvious place to start was with the media agencies, the creative agencies, because they are the ones ultimately responsible for the emissions. But brands are a key part of what we're trying to do, because ultimately they're the ones making the decisions. They are the ones that are going to exert influence on their own creative and media agencies to say, this is what I want. But also from the point of Action 5, when we talk about consumer behavior and influencing positive behavior within consumers. But we also, certainly with some of our markets, the brands really need a steer on what do I need to say, what can I say, what is the legislation around greenwashing. So having brands at the table is it may have been kind of the last piece of the puzzle originally, but it's probably one of the most important pieces of the puzzle, and I think they'll continue to have a much bigger part as Net Zero grows further.
Thank you. And then we have some more questions. Should the initiative involve regulatory or political entities?
That question has been asked before. Right now, we don't involve them because, I mean, we have conversations all the time, obviously, with some of our local governments. Myself and Valentina had a meeting yesterday in relation to trying to create or work with the EACA to talk to some of the European Parliament in terms of the EU legislation that's being formed at the moment, to try and see if the advertising industry itself can be part of those conversations. But as at Net Zero, we don't invite them. We're not a political entity, and nor do we want to kind of get involved in that sphere, because I think we'd be going down quite a tricky road, especially as we're based in so many different markets. I think we kind of generally stay out of that in the broadest sense. If that makes sense.
I understand. Has domestic media in any country taken a significant role in the initiative?
Have what? Sorry, Rita, can you repeat the first part of that?
Any domestic media taking a significant role in any country in this initiative?
When you say domestic media, do you mean media owners within each market, I guess, if I understand that correctly?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. I mean, yes, I guess in every market, it's driven by the local media owners and the local agencies. Of course, we have the global organizations, Havas and Group M and Publicis and all of those agencies, as well as global brands, but it is driven certainly from a local perspective. In Ireland, if I was to take that example, we have 100 local supporters in Ireland, and they're everyone from Diageo all the way through to some of the smaller commercial agencies, and indeed all of the media owners, like nearly all certainly outdoor media owners in Ireland are part of Net Zero. Broadcast is a little bit slower, but generally, yeah, we need to be driven locally as well as globally. So yes, they do take a significant part of what we try to do at a local level.
Okay, and then we have one more question and one more comment. So here comes the question. As a brand, should we consider whether an agency is an Net Zero service provider in our procurement processes?
The answer to that, I guess, is look, I mean, we can't nor do we want to dictate what anybody will do in terms of the suppliers that they take on, but look, it makes it easier, I guess. So if you know that the media agency that you will look to work with is already part of Net Zero, you'll know that a lot of the work is already done. So as a brand, I mean, I would suggest that it is a good idea, whether or not, I mean, you don't want to create, you don't want to leave the competitive advantage in terms of other people looking for the work as well. But I think if the agency is committed to Net Zero, it means that they are part of the framework and they're aware of best practice and they are online for all of the guidance that we can give. So it certainly would be a positive thing if your agency was part of Net Zero. And that's just a practical fact, I guess, because they will have all of this information already that they can help and guide you as a brand.
Thank you. And then there's one comment. It would be great if the quality of ads would be evaluated not only by visual and communicative excellence, but the sustainability aspect, footprint. Right. Less is more to be highlighted. Hope you understand the perspective here.
Actually, we do very much understand the perspective, and one of the things that we didn't really talk about in the presentation because it's not officially launched yet, but we have been working on a program called Every Brief Counts, and we're working with Kantar Media on this, where we're looking at where Kantar Media are compiling ads right across the globe to see how many of them are showcasing positive and sustainable behavior within the commercial, and we're working with them to try and create, or we have created, I guess, a toolkit that will show brands and advertisers how they can showcase more sustainable behavior. Be that, I mean, electric cars can be a little bit of a tricky subject sometimes, but how do you showcase less is more? How do you showcase less waste? How do you showcase recycling within your commercials, even if it isn't part of the overall product's message? But yeah, we're working on that. We'll be launching something in Cannes in June, but it is called Every Brief Counts. So if anybody wants some information on that or wants to speak to us directly, very happy to have that conversation.
Okay. So we have received the end of the webinar. Thank you so much, Mary O'Sullivan and Valentina Mendes Rizzo from Net Zero Europe. This was very informative presentation of this important case. And also thank you, Riikka-Maria Lemminki from Marketing Finland, from the Finnish side of view. And we are going to end our webinar here. Thanks to the audience. And if you have any questions, you can reach out to Mary and Valentina directly. You see their emails here, email addresses. So thank you and see you in the webinar next week. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.